Hello everyone, this is Vidit Master Niranjan for chess.com, and today I'm going to focus on the game played by Vidit Gujrathi against Hikaru Nakamura. The game might look very simple, but a lot happened in the game, so I'm going to take you through the important moments. It was a Queen's Gambit decline after d4, knight f6, c4, e6, knight f3, d5, knight c3, bishop e7. Now the reason why after knight f3 black goes for d5 is that after knight c3 black has this option to play bishop b4, but after knight f3 white is going straight into a Bogo, Queen's Indian or whatever you call it, but not the Nimzo Indian because the knight is not on b1. So now in this position Hikaru Nakamura went for d5 and he's been playing QGT for many years now. After knight c3, bishop e7, bishop f4, castles e3, knight bd7, bishop e2, d takes c4. And here, after castles, Vidit had faced this recently in a chess.com event. His opponent Sergei Kayakin played c5, but in this game, Nakamura chose knight b6. And now, in order to pick this pawn, you should either get your knight to d2 or to e5. This is clear. But Vidit first decided to play pawn to a4, intending to play a5. Obviously, Nakamura won't let him play a5. But after a4, he did go for a5 as the position demanded. And now in this position, there was an interesting idea. e4 is possible, but my hunch is that Vidit was not really interested to go for this because this pawn is dependent on the support of the knight, and maybe a move like bishop b4 is also possible for black, and white will have to give away the d5 square. If he pushes the pawn to e5, then this knight will sit on d5 and will be very good for black. So after bishop b4, he has to play something like queen c2, but the game will be still interesting. I think this was one way to go forward, but gauging the speed in which Vidit played this, I think after knight e5, it was still in his preparation. This is a novelty according to the databases, but previously there was e4 played and it was played in a correspondence game. Just going to take you through what happened in that game. It was played between Klaus and Fuzishawa. And this happened in 2016. So this was how the game went. White is trying to get this pawn and also maintain the center. And eventually he got the pawn, but the position was always balanced. You cannot really say that one side was better in the entire game. So this was how the game went. But now after knight b6, what I felt was that since the c4 pawn is anyway going to go, so black will next focus on getting all the other pieces into the game, and that's what happened. After e4, e5, knight e5, he got knight d5, just asking a question to this bishop. The point is that after the bishop moves to g3, he wants to play c5 and settle the matters in the center. So black wants to play against an IQP and white wants to take that IQP and play for activity. So let's see who succeeds in the long run. After c5, knight takes c4, knight takes c4, bishop takes c4, c takes d4, e takes c4. White will definitely not play knight d5 and open the scope for this bishop. So he will, after bishop b4, he will maintain the pressure. One idea here was to play queen d3. Just connecting the rooks and making sure that this bishop b3, bishop c2 is also coming in the picture. But Vidit chose to play rook c1, which is also normal, and now knight takes c3 is met by b takes c3, and it's not so clear if black should take it here. So here Nakamura went with knight b6. So he's attacking this bishop now, and bishop drops back to b3, and now with bishop d7, it looks like black has almost completed his development. Only the queen has to come out, and here there are many good moves. White has a different kind of options, and each option will take you to a different direction. For example, here if white wants to keep playing IQP position, then he can play bishop e5, intending to go queen g4, or he can directly go queen g4. Idea bishop e5. For instance, let's say if black plays bishop to c6, then white could play bishop to e5, attacking this. f6 is not possible because e6 is hanging, so he has to play g6. And then maybe something like rook d1. This is a balanced position. It's like black has this ability to sit on d5, but also white has different possibilities to go h4, h5. And if you want to study more about isolated queen pawn, I think you must definitely check out Winning Pawn Structures by Alexander Baburin, which will give you an idea about how to face IQP and how to play with the IQP. So here rook d3, rook h3, rook lift ideas also come into play. h4, h5, this also comes into play. But the move chosen by Vidit seems like a safe one. Like he's going for exchanges after d5. Also, to play d4 to d5 is also a very important theme in playing IQP positions. So after d5, maybe it's not clear yet, but you will see how black slowly will get something to hang on to. Like it's clear that the position is balanced and not nobody has an advantage yet. But after d5, it starts to feel as if Hikaru Nakamura has slight chance. So I think this is a very important moment. But after d5, you will see how slowly Nakamura comes out with some tiny edge. You cannot really call that an edge, but I can say that it is he who has the ability to pose more problems, and that is often an advantage at the elite level. After d5, bishop c3, rook c3, he went knight d5, bishop d5, e d5, and he picked the pawn. Now bishop a4 is met by queen b7, then there's not much to play, but he played bishop c6. Now the thing is, black's bishop is very well placed and he has a target here already, and the long run target is g2. Considering this, we cannot really say black has clear edge, but you will see what I mean. After queen d8, rook f d8, this is an opposite color bishop. And in opposite color bishop endgames, the tendency of draw is very high. But remember that the rooks are still on the board. So in situations like this, even at the high level, the player who has this ability to pose more problems often has the advantage. And now you see that the rook can come to d2 at will. It can also come to e2 whenever it wants to. The bishop is doing fine. But if you see it from the white's perspective, the pawn on b7 is defended. The pawn on a5 cannot be attacked so easily. Just this bishop c7, bishop b6, but then that can be solved by rook coming to d5. So if you look at these situations, maybe in your own games also, see who is able to pose problems. You may also get situations where your opponent is offering a draw. See if you have this chance to create some traps for your opponent. If you have a chance like that, don't accept that draw, play on. I really liked how competitive Hikaru Nakamura was in this position, and you will also see that Vidit learned his lesson from the previous games that happened yesterday and he defended the game very well. Now let's go to the next few moves. He plays b3, supporting the pawn on a4, and after rook d5, he wants to get this other rook into the game. And here Vidit makes sure that there is no background problem, and he creates the luft for his king, the flight square. And after h5, rook c1, rook d8, you can see it's very clear that it is black who has more more chances because of the squares it could occupy. So after h4, f6, bishop c7, rook d7, bishop b6, he decided that let's get both the rooks into the picture. So he does it by playing rook e5. That's what Hikaru does. And after rook e5, Vidit offers the exchange of pieces because usually exchanges benefit the defender. So in order to reduce the pressure, it makes sense to offer the exchange of pieces. And here after rook takes e3, bishop takes e3, rook d3, this pawn will be in danger. But Vidit quickly notices that he can give the pawn on b3 but get the pawn on a5. And all this happened in a very short time. So remarkable calculation. After rook c5, rook b3, rook c5, he first plays g6, he supports the pawn, and then he says after rook a5, rook b3. It is again not so clear if black is clearly better, but because of this g2 pawn, because of that that point, black has this confidence that it could go for more than a draw. So after rook a8 check, king f7, a5, rook a3, bishop f4, rook a4, we go by a few moves. Then I'll go into a critical position. After rook a4, this is a moment, and the move is very obvious. He wants to put more pressure on h4 pawn and plays g5. Now the thing is, this rook cannot really hold on to this pawn because it's too far away. But given a chance, he would like to maintain this pawn on h4, but now he is forced to play hg5, and so he goes for hg5, and after fg5 he goes f3, and then after rook a1 check, king h2. These pawns are on the light squares, very important to note, and we have black player has the light square bishop, but the same cannot be said about white, and that is precisely the reason why this position is slightly better for black. And after rook a2, king g1, g4, you can see that the pawn on f3 requires support. Again, Vidit is not able to hold on to that pawn because the rook is too far away, defining the weakness. So you can also see that the principle of second weakness is coming into the picture. The pawn on a5 is a weakness to a certain extent because it requires constant support. But then the major weakness is the pawn on f3 because there are no defenders. And f4 is not possible, of course, because of rook g2. So bishop f2 was played and Vidit gave up the pawn. Now I have played such situations before and I know that often the piece will be lost because of this pawn, and then you must know how to defend the rook bishop versus rook endgame. But it's not so clear, especially when you're down to less than 10 seconds or less than 1 minute, and to play just based on increment, it's not easy. And I have a feeling that Vidit worked on this endgame yesterday. He revised the basics again, and then he was very grateful that he was able to do it. This is my hunch. I feel that he did take a look at the drawing, the easy way to draw rook bishop. So let me go through those moments in which we reach the critical moment where the pawn is promoted, like almost promoted. So we get this position where the pawn comes to h2 almost, and then you see. So in this position, bishop h2 has to be played. There is no choice. And after bishop h2 k2, we reach this endgame. So in this position, they decided to play on, and this is move number 85, and on move number 135 the game ended in a draw. But what is the method that Vidit adopted this time? He adopted a drawing mechanism in which the rook and king are together. So I'll take you through different moments in which that happens. So you see, this is the first moment in which this happens. So he's keeping the king and rook very close so that the king supports the rook whenever in need and whenever the king is under a check. This is step 1. And then you see, again after check he just comes back and then stays with his king. So king and rook, this is the other drawing method that white could employ, and in this situation the king and rook, they have to be together, and it has to happen just one file below the last one. For example, if it's this is the last line, it has to happen on c7 and e7. Then there is another situation again where there is a stalemate idea, which I will come to now. So you see, this is a stalemate situation. It looks like the king is pushed to the corner, but then there is this stalemate trick that saves the game for Vidit. After rook g4, of course bg4 cannot be taken, and after king e3, he again keeps the rook together with the king and then gets this idea of a check. So this keeps happening. So they played on for 50 moves, and eventually the game ended in a draw. So what I liked about this game is how well Vidit defended this, because he had lost the previous day in the same endgame to Anish, but today he knew what to do, and again stalemate trick again, rook c2 check, which saves the game. So with this, what I want to show, with this what I want to convey is that there are a lot of differences when you are seeing the positions of opposite color bishops. Some positions are more equal than others because there the ability to create problems will be less. But in this case, you see, after the move d5 that Vidit played, it looked like position is simple and very much easy to defend, but it's not so easy, because after d5 it is only black who was in the driving seat and was able to pose tiny problems. And then the drawback of having this opposite color bishop is our bishop, the side, let's say the dark square bishop here, cannot really do anything about light squares. So that's the sad part. But let's say if you are on the attacking side, we would love that, isn't it? So with this, I just want to convey that compare the equal positions and see why a particular side is better, why a particular side is able to pose problems, and learn from the games this way. So that's it from my side. I hope you enjoyed this little video. I'll be back again. Until then, take care. Bye.